Well, good morning. Glad you could join us. It's a busy election year in Michigan, and there's a lot on the legislative agenda as well. This morning, we'll get a downstate perspective on all of that and more. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, State Senator Margaret O'Brien is a lifelong resident of Kalamazoo County. She grew up on local dairy farms with her parents and three brothers, and credits the farm with learning the work ethic she has today. She graduated from Mattawan High School and the James Madison College at Michigan State University. Prior to serving at the state capitol, Senator O'Brien served on the Portage City Council. She was elected to the State House of Representatives and served from 2011 to 2014. She was unanimously selected both terms to the position of Associate Speaker Pro Temp and frequently chaired the House proceedings. In 2014, she was elected to represent the 20th Senate District, which includes all of Kalamazoo County. Senator O'Brien, welcome. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me today.
Before we get down to all that legislative stuff, let's give our viewers a chance to get to know you a little better. We mentioned some of your background. I did notice in your bio that early on in your career you were a social worker.
I worked for Catholic Charities for almost 9 years and worked both with teenagers who are experiencing some crises at home and also worked with parents of young children 0 to 5. So I was very blessed to be able to get to work with people who had some unique challenges in their lives.
Okay, and then you became a realtor as well.
I did. You know, social work is very hard when you're dealing with a lot of tough issues, and I decided I wanted to still serve people, but I needed a different arena in which to do it, and so real estate was a very natural fit for me.
And a little more about Kalamazoo for people to get to know. Everybody knows the name Kalamazoo, I'm sure, but kind of looking at some stats, it appears that Kalamazoo County is probably roughly the size of the UP as far as population goes, perhaps even a little bit bigger.
You know, it is, and we're the hub of Southwest Michigan. It's a unique area, similar in some ways to Marquette County, just bigger, where we've got an urban area, the city of Kalamazoo, about 80,000 people, but then we have a lot of rural communities that surround it. So coming up to the UP, you know, Marquette County is just a little bit smaller version of Kalamazoo County.
I noticed too in reading up about Kalamazoo, they have a River Valley Trail system, and the reason I mention that is because a number of UP communities have really bought into the trail system. We have the Iron Ore Heritage Trail in Marquette and other systems. And trails have become kind of a major selling point for Michigan.
Well, you know, in my community where I live in the city of Portage, which is about 45,000 people, we started trails back in the 80s and 90s. And then you mentioned the River Valley Trail, which has been great because it connects to what's called the Cal Haven Trail, which is a 33-mile trail that connects Kalamazoo County to Lake Michigan. And so people can travel for hundreds of miles through different trails, and they're all interconnected. We really want to promote being outdoors and making sure that people are active.
And you mentioned in conversation before we started the show that you and your husband spend a lot of time in the UP as well.
We do. We love the Upper Peninsula, and Marquette has become a second home for us, largely because of former State Representative John Keevala. He was a good friend, always made sure anytime I crossed that bridge, I gave him a call. And so while we love all the areas of the Upper Peninsula, Marquette's a special place to us, and so is the Keevala family.
And the trail systems certainly are nice for local people, but also a great attraction for tourism, and tourism is a very important industry here in the UP, as I'm sure you know.
It is, and we love it when we're staying in Marquette. We can go on the trails that are around Lake Superior. It's just so beautiful, and trails really allow all of us to get outdoors and stay active no matter the weather. You know, you can, whether it's skiing or it's hiking, we can get out and be able to enjoy the beauty. So I love the trails up here, and I know that you've got the Fat Tire races that are going on tomorrow. It's nice to see so many people outdoors in the winter.
I'm looking at my list now. You serve as chair of the Senate Veterans, Military Affairs, and Homeland Security Committee, vice chair of the Banking and Financial Services Committee, a member of the Commerce, Health Policy, and Insurance Committees, and on the State Police and Military Affairs Appropriations Subcommittee. It must keep you busy.
I'm very busy. I am not known for sitting still very well, but it's a wide array of committees, and there's a lot of important issues. And obviously the veterans issues, that's something very important up here with having the Jacob Eddy Veterans Home. So each year I come up here, part for the sled dog races, because it's been a fun way to get to know the great people of Marquette County and the surrounding areas. But also I get to see the Jacob Eddy Veterans Home and see how's everything going. Are they having the resources they need to take care of our fine men and women who served our country?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I know there were some issues last year with the facility downstate. I believe Jacob Eddy has always been ranked very high as far as the job they do. But the state has come up with a new plan to kind of do away with some of the larger facilities and go with some smaller ones. Will that affect Jacob Eddy at some point?
You know, the only impact on Jacob Eddy will be making sure that we're investing in strong infrastructure, that we have a facility that meets the needs of our veterans. And the Grand Rapids Veteran Home was the first veterans home in the state, and it was largely because you had a donor in the 1800s who donated land. And over time, it's grown so big. And so what we really need is more veterans homes scattered around the state. In Southeast Michigan, over a third of our veterans reside there, but yet there's no home. The closest home is almost 3 hours away in Grand Rapids. So we really want to start making decisions based on what's best for the veterans. And what's been great about Jacob Eddy, it has always stayed small. So they haven't experienced some of the problems we saw at the Grand Rapids Veterans Home. And while we're glad that those problems have largely been resolved and constant monitoring has happened, we need to make sure that the future homes are really in the Jacob Eddy model, small and community driven.
Are there other issues that you're dealing with concerning veterans right now that are especially high on your agenda?
You know, one of the issues from a recent audit is too many veterans are applying for Medicaid when they may be eligible for VA benefits. So making sure that when people are applying for benefits, we need to ask, not just are you a veteran, because some people don't think of themselves as a veteran. Have you ever served in the armed forces? We need to have a conversation, because if they've ever served, there may be benefits they're leaving on the table that they've earned.
Okay. A lot of other issues I want to talk about. We'll get to those in just a couple of minutes. A couple of moments. Back with more on the Ryan Report in just 2 minutes. Our guest this morning is State Senator Margaret O'Brien from Kalamazoo County. Let's talk about Michigan State University. Obviously, you're a senator, but you're also alumni. We all kind of look back and found it hard to believe what happened. What are you taking away from all of that now?
You know, it's been very difficult to go through this process as somebody who is an alum of Michigan State University. But what's been more difficult is I know people who were victims of Larry Nassar. One of them, Rachel Denhollander, was the first person who went public with her identity and her name to bring charges against him. And I've known her for almost 20 years. I knew her as a young child. And to hear her story, and then to hear also the story of Sterling Reichman, who still lives in Kalamazoo County, it's just been hard to wrap your mind around how could this happen, somebody be so well regarded, but yet have access to thousands of girls and young women across our country and sexually assault these young girls and women across our country. But then as I started researching the issue even more, when we say this is a cultural problem at Michigan State University, it doesn't mean it's just athletics. I have another constituent in my community who was raped, beaten, and stalked by her instructor at Michigan State. And the Title IX process failed her as well. So I've been working very closely with the interim president, former Governor Engler, and shared with him the stories of my constituents and of other people who I've met through this process. And I'm glad that he's taking this very seriously. He's already started implementing changes. We're working with him, we're watching him, and we're going to make sure that Michigan State University and every college campus and every youth organization is set the best way to ensure a safe environment for our kids and young men and women.
We know what happened. I guess the question becomes, how could it happen? And obviously investigations are going to go forward. We may still see further shockwaves, right?
We may, and it's really hard when you have a pedophile like Larry Nassar who somehow managed to get their tentacles into so many well-respected organizations, not just Michigan State University and United States Gymnastics, but also a number of high schools and high-rated gyms in Michigan and throughout the country. But many of the girls told people that something was wrong, that they had been violated, and those people hadn't listened. Now, some of those people, I think, they may still have charges coming against them, but we found in the process that coaches and athletic trainers who were told about this, there was no law requiring them to report it. We have a mandated reporter law. As a social worker, I was a mandated reporter. A high school coach who's also a teacher is a mandated reporter. But if you're a college coach, a youth coach who is not a teacher at a school, or you're a little league coach, somebody can come to you and say, this happened to me, and you're not required to report it. So we need to make sure that we expand who's mandated to report. But also there were some mandated reporters at Michigan State University who were told.
What do you expect the legislature to do as a result of what's happened?
Expand who is a mandated reporter. Increase the penalties on those who fail to follow the law and they do not report. We're also looking at extending the civil and criminal statute of limitations. Michigan is amongst the worst in the nation for victims to be able to go back and to face their accuser and to seek justice, whether it's criminally or civilly. We're also looking at pornography. The laws are the penalties are far too low for those who participate in child pornography, which Larry Nassar did. And we know that child pornography and unfortunately sexual abuse go hand in hand. So it's very important that we look all-encompassing. But most important, the greater challenge we have, which will not be in this first round of bills that we'll be introducing in a few weeks. How do we truly prevent child abuse, sexual child abuse? We have a lot of education to do. It's not just teachers, parents. That is going to be a harder issue to crack because it's not like it's already against the law. How do we actually change a culture in our country where it has been okay to harm our young people and especially to harm girls and young women?
There's been a lot of discussion about the way the boards are established at Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State. They're elected statewide elections unlike the rest of the universities. There's been some suggestion it should be changed. How do you feel about that, and actually can it be changed?
It can be changed. There is a resolution in the House of Representatives right now that is being pushed to allow for it to become a governor-appointed board, which all the other universities are governor-appointed boards, and it has worked fairly well. There's some people who still would like to see it on the ballot, but I do challenge people. Wayne State, U of M, and Michigan State, they all are elected on the ballot, but so is our state school board of education. And when I go out to the communities, I say, just name one person on any of those boards, and they can't. And when you look at who wins election, it depends on who had the higher turnout of straight ticket voting, Republicans or Democrats. So the former president of Michigan's School Board of Education that guides all K-12 policy, John Austin, president of the board, did not win re-election because Trump took Michigan and most of the straight ticket voting was Republicans. That's how we're picking people who lead our policy agendas. I would like to see a more thorough process where there's vetting. We're looking for specific skills and talents. Instead of just going through the Democrat and Republican convention process where the Democrats run left, the Republicans run right, and whoever survives, then whoever wins the straight ticket voting, that's who's going to get picked. That seems a little bit too much up to chance.
Okay. We'll have more questions for you in just a couple of moments. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Once again this morning we're talking with State Senator Margaret O'Brien. One of the interesting things that you're involved with, but really involves the UP, has been called the Northern Michigan Sports Commission. And why don't you tell us what it is?
Well, you know, today in Michigan, we all pay liquor taxes, and a lot of that goes today to help support Cobo Hall in Detroit, which has been great for a number of things, including auto show and whatnot. But there are needs throughout the rest of the state when it comes to tourism. And here what we're looking at is a great opportunity for the Upper Peninsula to bring international competition for ski jumping, ski competition here to the Upper Peninsula. This is one of the top-rated sports in Europe, and we want to bring that home to Michigan. And so what Senator Casperson proposed, and I've been working with him on, is let's look at all the fees that we pay to support Cobo Hall. And there is an abundance of fees. We can make sure we're paying for the ongoing maintenance for Cobo Hall, but there's extra money. Let's bring that to other parts of the state that also rely on tourism. And we know the Upper Peninsula has a lot of tourism, but what many people don't realize is the unique position of the Upper Peninsula when it comes to winter sports. And this is an opportunity to bring jobs here, economic development, and to really bring more opportunities. And so supporting Copper Peak and bringing international competition here, it's been a pleasure to work with Senator Casperson.
And as I understand, it's not just Copper Peak. In the future, it could be more. This would be like $1.9 million a year for 10 years and could benefit other northern Michigan communities as well.
What we've seen is when you do something like this, where you have a commitment, and there is a commitment from international ski jumping organizations to hold competitions here, you start with something small and it will snowball, and it will bring about a lot more opportunities for people who live here locally, who want to stay here locally. One of the challenges of the Upper Peninsula is that when kids graduate high school and college, if they want to stay here, there's not that abundance of job opportunities. We want to see them to be able to be entrepreneurial, and I really appreciate what Senator Casperson and his Chief of Staff, Marty Fattanti, have done to really raise awareness, and I am a big supporter of whatever we can do to bring good paying jobs to the Upper Peninsula.
I know you're also a supporter of trying to make it safer for bicyclists on Michigan's roads, and apparently as a state we don't stand very well at the present time.
We don't, and actually a lot of people may remember that it was in Kalamazoo County. I had 9 cyclists that were involved in a terrible accident. 5 were killed, 4 survived when a drugged and drunk driver plowed into them when they were just out for an evening stroll. And it really raised awareness of how many people are hit by cars. And we need to take this seriously. We can all share the road safely. Cars and bikes can commingle, but there seems to be this hostility right now of some automobile drivers. So we want to make sure we're training our young drivers to understand that all users can use the road, but most importantly, establish a safe passing distance. We'd like to see 3 feet, which is the length of your arm. And if 3 feet's not possible because of the design of the roadway, then to pass in a safe manner, similar to what you have to do when there's a police car stopped on the side of the road.
What's the prospects this legislation will pass?
Very good. I've been working really well with my partners in the House of Representatives. Many of them were new on the Transportation Committee, and we've spent a lot of time sharing with them the history of the issue. So I'm feeling very good this will get across the finish line this year.
We have only about a minute left. One of the big issues here for several years now has been the so-called big box stores. And I think for a while we felt it was just a problem for us, but apparently it affects other areas in the state as well. Are we likely to see anything happen in the legislature?
I hope so. The courts have sided with us, and we need to do something because this is about fairness, fair taxation. You shouldn't get a benefit because of the size of your business, and you shouldn't be allowed to manipulate the system, because when you do, all it does is harm the small mom and pop stores who are really the key drivers of our long-term economy. We need a fair system of taxation for all.
And again, there was a concern perhaps that because of the new Tax Reform Act that Michigan citizens would pay a penalty, but the legislature has dealt with that issue, right?
We've taken care of that, and in fact,
sweeten the pot?
We sweeten the pot. They're going to get more money back than if they would have if nothing had changed at the federal level.
And you're increasing the amount of the exemption over a period of several years?
Yes, fully phased in, $4,900 per person.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming in this morning and talking with us, and I know you're here to enjoy the Upper Peninsula, and you come back frequently, so perhaps we can get together and talk about it again sometime in the future.
Definitely. My 18-year-old's at Northern Michigan, so I'm back a lot. Happy to join you.
Okay. And I'll be back with you in just 2 minutes. You know, we all must learn to adapt to change, and it's not always easy. Actually, it's easier for young people than for those of us who have been around a bit longer. Oftentimes, young people don't even see it as change. It's just the next step in the current order of things. What set me off this time? Well, according to a report in Billboard magazine, Best Buy is abandoning music CDs and will no longer sell them in its stores. And Target, on the other hand, says it will only sell music CDs on a consignment basis. That means they'll only pay for CDs when customers buy them. It also means that CDs probably aren't long for the world at Target either, or anywhere for that matter. So how and when did this idea of going to a store and buying something we could take home and play music on with some kind of device begin? Well, Thomas Edison, while working on improvements to the telegraph and the telephone, figured out a way to record sound on tinfoil-coated cylinders. He didn't have recording music in mind at that point. How we got from there to where we are today is a long and winding road. At the beginning of the last century, people were buying music on records, similar to the 78 RPM discs that had one song on each side of the disc. The smaller 45 RPM records and long-playing 33 1/3 multi-song records came around in the 50s or slightly before. And we advanced from records to 8-track tapes, which were always kind of bulky and probably most popular for use in cars, and the cassette tapes, which featured a lot of songs on a single tape. Who can forget that little Sony Walkman you could carry around with you? And then it arrived, the ultimate in music quality and convenience. It was the CD, or compact disc, which had a pretty good run. But by the beginning of this century, they began to be replaced by other forms of digital storage. I've told you before how I've watched the evolution of all this with records and tapes that would spin or move through some kind of machine that made the music play. And now I have this little tiny device where nothing visibly happens, but it stores hundreds of songs, and when I push the right button, music comes out. As far as I'm concerned, it's magic. Why am I carrying on about this advance of technology? It's not that I'm resisting the new devices. They're actually pretty nice. So what's the big deal? The fact is, this means the day might be just around the corner when you cannot stop at a store and buy music that you can hold in your hand and play on a device. When that happens, it will truly mark the end of an era. Yes, you can buy it online, and once you get used to it, the process is pretty easy. And it's really nice to carry hundreds of songs around in your pocket on your cell phone or on a device you hardly know is there. But it's just hard to get used to the idea that the day may be coming soon when you can't walk into a store and purchase a pre-recorded songs. Seems like some of the romance has gone out of the music business. Of course, it's also gone from a lot of the music today. I'll be back in a minute. Let's wrap it up this morning with our usual reminder that if you miss our show, it is also available at uppermichigansource.com. Today's show will be there starting tomorrow afternoon. Thanks to Senator O'Brien for joining us this morning. It's always good to get another perspective on some of the issues facing our state. And I do want to thank you for being here today. Look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.